In our last segment, we focused on the human toll of the virus and the strain it's putting on our healthcare system. But of course, the pandemic, it is also just crushing our economy. And just like news about new infections, the economic headlines, they keep getting worse and worse. Two headlines from today's paper, I think, tell the story. Another spike in jobless claims, with more than 850,000 Americans filing their first unemployment claims last week. And this, more and more Americans shoplifting food, medicines, other essentials because they can't afford the basics in our COVID economy. And Washington still has yet to act. The mayor of Chicago boiling down her frustrations like this.
I know that there's a lot of posturing that goes on in Washington, D.C., but dear God, stop the nonsense. Get something done. We are hurting here in the heartland and all across our country, and we need the federal government to step up and do their job.
And yet, on Capitol Hill, still no movement on a new relief package. Congress passing laws on other issues today, but not COVID relief. And yet, Speaker Pelosi today sounding like someone who's close to getting a deal done.
I think they've made great progress. I think they have some certain things remain, and that's up to them. I don't know the inner workings, but I think they've made great progress, and I salute them for that. We cannot leave here without having a piece of legislation.
So is Pelosi's optimism justified? Well, for more on the relief bill, along with a slew of other topics in the news, let's bring in Congressman Tom Malinowski. He's a Democrat representing New Jersey's 7th District. Previously, he served as Assistant Secretary of State for Democracy, Human Rights, and Labor in the Obama administration. First, Congressman, if you could, give us the latest as to where we stand with the stimulus. I cannot believe we're getting to mid-December right now, and we still don't have on the table a deal, given obviously the acute pain so many Americans are facing.
Yeah, I totally agree. As you know, we lost 3,000 of our fellow Americans yesterday. And obviously, the response to this crisis is going to cause more economic dislocation. It would be unconscionable if Congress went home for the holidays without agreeing on a deal. The good news is that we've made, I think, more progress in the last week than we have in the last couple of months. There is a bipartisan package that does at least the minimum of everything that's important to get us through the winter. It has strong bipartisan support in the House, in the Senate. The Democratic leadership, including Speaker Pelosi, have backed it 100%. We have one outlier, and that's Mitch McConnell, but I think we can overcome that.
What's the biggest stumbling block to your understanding? Is it the unemployment insurance? Is it state aid? I mean, where is the biggest holdup here to get us over the finish line?
It appears the two big stumbling blocks are state and local assistance, which is something that all the Democrats, including me, and actually many of the Republicans support, because we don't want our state governments and our municipalities laying off cops and firefighters and teachers because revenue is down. So I think there's a deal to be had that allows for state and local assistance and limited, reasonable liability reform that is strictly linked to this crisis.
COVID, and put it in, if you could, through the lens of your district. Just how bad has things gotten, and also the capacity to deal with the surge we're already seeing, but expected to only get worse over the next month or so?
It's an awful situation that we're in. If you look at the United States as a whole, it's never been worse. New Jersey is doing better than the rest of the country because we've made some wise decisions. We were disciplined. We were together for the most part on this. We followed the guidelines. And so although things are a lot worse in my district now than they were 2 or 3 months ago, they're certainly not as bad as a lot of places in the Midwest and the South that were irresponsible. One piece of good news, you've probably seen and reported that our rate of transmission in New Jersey has actually been going down for the most part for the last 2 or 3 weeks. So that's a good trend. That suggests that what we are doing is working.
A belated congratulations on your re-election, and it took a couple weeks here for finally it to be formalized. There were a lot of Democrats, in fact, your colleagues, who won't be going back to Washington in January, and a colleague of yours, Congresswoman Spanberger in Virginia, who's also a self-identified moderate, said, we need to not ever use the word socialist or socialism ever again. We lost good members because of that. The concerns that she and others have echoed is, the big freshman class that came in a couple of years ago, they were largely moderates in moderate districts, and the left flank of the party is putting some of them in untenable positions. How is the Democratic Party right now, and use the House as your frame of reference, going into a Biden administration with obviously a divided legislative branch here and very tight margins? Is there an acknowledgement as to the political realities, or do you think you got problems ahead, with the divided party?
Yeah, look, I think Democrats are pretty good at acknowledging reality. And, one of those realities is Joe Biden's going to be our next president. I wish Republicans, some of my colleagues who are supposed to be leaders, would acknowledge that obvious reality. And at the same time, Democrats acknowledge the reality that a lot of Americans voted for divided government. They voted to get rid of Trump and to put in, I think, a decent, competent, unifying person to be our president. But at the same time, they don't want him to have all the power, and they want us to be pragmatic in the Congress. They want us to be pragmatic in solving the country's problems, and that means reaching across the aisle. It means finding solutions to problems that are ambitious, that are real, but at the same time can bring moderate Republicans into the tent. So we know that we can't get major legislation passed without the support of Republicans like Mitt Romney and Susan Collins, who I think are very much willing to work with us so long as we take that pragmatic approach.
I mentioned at the top your bona fides as it relates to foreign policy and your background in the State Department. We now know who the Secretary of State designee is, Tony Blinken, and you go back with him, in fact, back to the days of JCC indoor soccer, as I understand. We got a photo up here. You were the goalie, and, what was Blinken? How was that?
Well, we won the championship that year. It was a historic event. I'm sure you covered it at the time, the DC Jewish Community Center Indoor Soccer League. But anyway, Tony is a good friend of mine, but more important, he will be a great Secretary of State. He is somebody who understands the importance of America leading the world through alliances and on a foundation of our values and ideals. And there's so much work to be done right now to rebuild the alliances that America needs to protect ourselves and to build a more peaceful and prosperous world.
Finally, I want to talk a bit about a bill that you have, particularly targeting what has become a common phrase now with fake news and these conspiracy, QAnon coming top of mind. Talk about that, and this is somewhat personal to you as well. And you're going to, by the way, have a colleague in the next Congress who is a devout QAnon follower, as bizarre as that is. How can we police something where you have the line of free speech, even ridiculous free speech, and at the same end, try and at least agree on the same set of facts?
Yeah. In America, we've all got the right to be stupid. We've got the right to say crazy, mean, nasty, and dishonest things. The First Amendment protects all of that. But here's the deal with Facebook and these big social media companies. Imagine you're a kid and you come across some really nasty video on Facebook, say a horrible anti-Semitic video. And so you play it. And then a minute later, your phone rings. And the voice says, hey, man, it's Freddie from Facebook. We noticed that you just watched a really cool anti-Semitic video. And so here's what, we want to send you the names of 20 people on the internet that share your interest in anti-Semitic conspiracy theories. And we want to help you get together with those people so that, you can do some really cool stuff together. We'd be pretty upset at Facebook, right, if that was happening. But that's actually what they do, not by calling you on the phone, but because they write algorithms that basically push to all of us more content like what we've already indicated that we like, right? So if you click on a cute kitten video, you're going to get a lot of cute animal videos, right? But if you click on a QAnon conspiracy or something hateful or anti-Semitic or terroristic, the Facebook algorithm, the Google algorithm will push more and more and more of that hateful stuff to you until that's all you're seeing. That is the only reality that you know. And so I have legislation that says, not that they can't do that even, but that they should be liable in court for some of the worst harms, acts of terrorism, criminal hate, violent hate crimes, if you can show a link in court between how they actively promote that content with their algorithms and the crime being committed. And then judges will hear those cases, and those judges still have to respect the First Amendment, but at least they'll be able to hear both sides.
Well, I certainly appreciate the time, and happy holidays to you as well, Congressman. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much. Always happy to join.
So from Washington, we will head south to Georgia, the eye, if you will, of the political universe here. When we come back, I'll be talking to a person who runs one of the most important counties, for the Democrats at least, that is, in Georgia, and we'll get the very latest for the conditions on the ground.